Hello, my dear viewers, and welcome back. Now, let's see, what do we have on the list today? I'm gonna go get some aspirin.
I'm gonna break you in two. Fight! Let's make this quick. Fatality.
Okay, let's just get this over with. Killer Croc versus the Lizard. So, first problem, Fan War basically admits right off the bat that this is not only going to be a trendy matchup, but he's repeating a matchup he already did beforehand, so he is quite literally doing the exact same thing, but expecting a different result. So, once again, we're not off to a great start here, Fan War.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
So not only are we doing the same matchup again, but you're doing a trendy matchup of Marvel versus DC. Yeah, because we haven't seen that enough times. I'm pretty sure Death Battle alone has over 30 of those things under their belt. But you are going to try to defend it by saying, oh, it's a rivalry. Can you please explain to me how these two are rivals? Is it just because they're both from Marvel versus DC? If so, that's stupid. I encourage you to look up the definition of the word rival, Fan War, because I don't think it means what you think it means. And if your argument is, well, they're both reptile creatures from comic books, that's not what a rivalry is. These two, unless there's some kind of crossover I have not heard about, then these two are not rivals. And the only reason you're having them fight is because you've already done this matchup before, and they're both lizard mutant creatures, and it's easy. Because you're either too lazy to think of actual interesting matchups, or you're just not very good at it. Either one is likely. I'm almost certain you got this from DeviantArt, because that's about as much quality or thought that was put into this. And another reason why this matchup is so lame is because it's another example of, let's take two characters that basically have the same exact character and the same exact powers and have them fight, because it's easier to animate and easier to do research for, because I don't have to do all kinds of research into different types of powers and understanding them, because I can spend most of the fight having them punch and claw each other, and I can avoid doing power scaling. Speaking of which, power scaling, there is none. Once again, not a single bit of power scaling. He just lists off their feats. You could, at the very least, say that this character dodged bullets, which would make them supersonic speed, or this character dodged an explosion, which would make them hypersonic, or this character's building level because he destroyed a building. You can't even be bothered to do that. You can't do any power scaling, and I know this because you've told me that you can't. And even when you do power scaling, you admit that you can't do math, which, while I can understand calculations can be a pain in the ass, if you're not very good at math, then why are you even bothering doing something like power scaling in the first place? Because that's literally more than half of the job. And you can't be bothered to do any power scaling. None. You just list off their feats. That's it. And you barely even do that. You give us no indication as to how strong these two are. And there's not a lot going on here. These two characters are really not all that powerful, so it shouldn't be that difficult to power scale them, but once again, you're either too lazy or you don't know how to do it. So you're literally failing at doing the vast majority of what you're supposed to be doing. But outside of that, there's not really a whole lot you can do with this matchup. Just a lot of punching and kicking, maybe occasionally they'll throw stuff at each other. While I will admit, you did a decent job explaining why the lizard wins, even though they're pretty much the same strength and speed, although the lizard is slightly stronger. One is building level, the other is large building level, and they're pretty much around the same speed. However, though, I can give you props for explaining that lizard has better regeneration, which is fine enough, except one little decent thing doesn't make up for the fact that you've done no power scaling, and the fact that you didn't even specify which version of the Lizard and Killer Croc that you were using. Were you using the Arkham Asylum version? Were you using the comic book version? If so, which one was it? Post-Crisis? Pre-Crisis? Same with the Lizard. Which version of the Lizard are you using? Are you using 616? Are you using the Spectacular Spider-Man? Are you using the Amazing Spider-Man version of the Lizard? Why aren't you specifying this? You know this is something you have to do when it comes to comic book characters. So why aren't you doing it? So right now, you're already at, what, 2 strikes so far? And the animation is decent, but it's only decent by sprite animation standards, which I'll give the animator some credit, but I'm not giving you any credit because you just hired someone to do the animation for you. So you get no credit there. And the music is decent. The voice acting is at least better. You actually managed to tweak the audio correctly so we can actually hear what the characters are saying, unlike Yang versus Doomfist and Cyborg versus Astro Boy, where we literally can't even hear what they're saying. So at least you improved the audio somewhat. However, though, your own voice recordings aren't that much better. You still sound tired, and you sound bored, and your attempts to come off as humorous don't sound genuine, because your tone still sounds boring and lifeless. So, while you did improve in, like, one area, you still fail in all the other areas, because you still can't be bothered to power scale. You can't be bothered to come up with a halfway decent or interesting matchup. You can't be bothered to write a halfway decent script that doesn't come off as let me copy Death Battle style, because that's basically what you're doing, whether you want to admit it or not. And you can't say that, well, I came out before Death Battle, because nobody knew who the hell you were. So you can't really use the excuse that, well, Death Battle's copying my scripts. No, they're basically ripping off Death Battle style. And what's annoying is there's not a lot to talk about here, because I would just be repeating the same criticisms I made in other episodes. While I can give you credit for improving in one tiny little area, that doesn't make up for the fact that you keep consistently screwing up in other areas. So my final rating for this is a 2 out of 10. The animation is decent, the voice acting and music is decent, the audio is slightly better in the fact that we can actually hear what the characters are saying, but due to the lack of power scaling, the garbage matchup, and repeating the same matchup that you've already done beforehand, showing an extreme amount of laziness, I'm giving this a 2 out of 10. And that's me being generous, because it should likely be much, much lower. You still have a lot to learn, but you're probably not going to learn too much, because the pace in which you learn from your mistakes is so slow. I imagine it'll be at least another 5 or 10 years before you produce a decent episode that is on Death Battle's level of quality. And even if you achieved that, that still wouldn't be saying much. But what do you all think about this episode, Killer Croc versus the Lizard? Did you think it was okay? Did you actually request this matchup? Because I have a hard time believing people actually asked for this. And what should I review next? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys around next time.